Good morning, everybody. That's Sarah, Beautiful Disaster. Welcome to my channel. It's a little bit dark in here, and I look like a Gorgon again, but whatever. I'm just going to throw this all out there. Let's talk how they determine cause of death for a minute, shall we? And I'm going to dive into this a little bit on a personal level, but it should be able to explain things a little bit easier. So when you hear these people talking about how, oh, they're over-exaggerating the COVID deaths, not really, they aren't. So dying of COVID and with COVID are two very different things, right? But so let me walk you through this. The cause of death is the immediate reason that person has expired. All right. So contributing factors are actually a whole separate section on the death certificate. So if somebody were to have a pre-existing condition, TM, like heart disease or something like that, that would go into a contributing factor. However, if they had COVID-19 would go in as the immediate cause of death. If you look at someone's death certificate very closely, it actually says cause of death and then interval of the reason why they're dying. Now, if somebody passes away from cancer, 9 times out of 10, they don't actually cancer is listed as like a secondary cause of death, but almost always you're going to get something like pneumonia or something like that. That's the immediate cause of death. So that would be listed as a pneumonia cancer type deal. And then like diabetes would be listed as a contributing factor. When Alex died, good example, actually, Alex had AFib, VFib, VTAC. Oh God, I'm actually losing my ability to remember some of this. AFib, VFib, VTAC. Cardiomyopathy, cardiomegaly, and then he had anasarca and a couple other things, actually. His heart was fucked up, is basically what it comes down to. When he passed away, they walked out into the hallway. Now, mind you, I had no idea he had some massive infection at all. So they didn't tell me any of that stuff whatsoever in the hours we were sitting in the hospital in the ICU. But when she walked out and she goes, his heart was just so sick. And I remember thinking, yeah, it was. I mean, that made sense. I mean, all it was going to take was like 1 or 2 things, and that was going to be it. He was already having seizures and things like that. So I assumed that cause of death was going to be listed as heart disease, advanced, something like that. A couple days later, I get his death certificate. Now, I won't tell you I was not anticipating that his cause of death was going to be listed as septic shock. I can tell you that. So Alex's official cause of death was septic and cardiogenic shock. Interval was hours. They also listed the stuff that was going on with his heart as years. Contributing factors were... they listed some of the heart disease in the contributing factors, chronic kidney disease, and then a acute kidney injury on chronic kidney disease. And then they actually included very historical methamphetamine use as a contributing factor to his death. His cause of death was sepsis. Yes, he had all these issues with his heart and everything, but if somebody gets hit by a truck with diabetes, their immediate cause of death is severe trauma post-injury, and then diabetes it wouldn't even be a contributing factor in that. So just because somebody has heart disease and gets COVID doesn't mean that their cause of death is going to be listed as heart disease. The thing that killed them was the COVID. So when people are bitching about how this is rolling, I strongly suggest you inform them to talk to their nearest coroner or their nearest medical examiner to get this information, because people are doing this whole, oh, they're dying with COVID. Yes, chances are good this person could have lived a longer life had they not gotten the COVID. The COVID is the cause of death. With Alex, could he have lived longer with his heart being as messed up as it was? Yeah. If he hadn't gotten a systemic overall body infection, sepsis, he'd probably still be alive. Now, granted, there was a whole bunch of other stuff going on there that nobody knew about, but that doesn't matter. His immediate cause of death was a massive infection. Just because he had all that other stuff. Same thing with my dad. My dad's cause of death was, I believe, pneumonia and cancer, if I remember correctly. I have his death certificate somewhere. You know, my dad had thyroid cancer. The cancer is not actually what killed him. I mean, it was definitely a contributing factor. The reason that he had all of the issues going on with his body was definitely cancer related, but the cause of death was listed as, like, I think, a bacterial pneumonia, if I remember correctly. Same thing with my grandmother. My grandmother had an aortic dissection, and then she passed away from a torn aneurysm in her aortic trunk. My grandmother was relatively sick for a good chunk of her life. So her cause of death was listed as hours blood loss, and there's a exsanguinated pretty much. And I'm sorry that this might be a really difficult subject for some people, but for me, it just kind of isn't. Like people dying sucks. And I know 4 years ago, because we just passed the 4-year mark with Alex, I probably would have been singing a little bit of a different tune. But when it comes to science and how these things are determined, it's really important that we're calling people out on when they're sending out this misinformation. So these folks are dying as a direct result of having caught COVID-19. The underlying factors are not the cause of death. It can't be. So if somebody gets COVID-19 on top of having diabetes, or if somebody gets COVID-19 on top of having severe asthma, or if someone gets COVID-19 on top of having cancer, the immediate cause of death is still COVID-19 and will be counted as such. If you are having a hard time with that subject, please do let me know. Have a good one, everybody.